God simply is. The Bible does not begin by a long set of proofs to prove the existence of God. It does not begin with a bottom-up approach, nor does it begin with some kind of adjacent analogy or the like. It just begins, in the beginning, God. Now, if human beings are the test of everything, this makes no sense at all. Because then we have the right to sit back and judge whether it's likely that God exists. Evaluate the evidence and come out with a certain probability that perhaps God of some sort or other exists. And thus we become the judges of God. But the God of the Bible isn't like that. It just begins in the beginning. God, He is. He is not the object whom we evaluate. He is the Creator who has made us, which changes all the dynamics. This is bound up with some developments in Western thought that we should appreciate. Before the Renaissance, even right through the early part of the Renaissance, really down to the time of the Reformation, most people in the Western world presupposed that God exists and that He knows everything. Human beings exist, and because God knows everything, what we know must necessarily be some small subset of what He knows. In other words, all of our knowledge, because He knows everything, must be a subset of what He knows exhaustively and perfectly. That means that all of our knowledge, in this way of looking at reality, must come in some sense by God disclosing what He knows, by God disclosing it in nature, by God disclosing it by His Spirit, by God disclosing it in the Bible. That was simply presupposed. But with the rise in the 1600s of what is now called Cartesian thought, under the influence of René Descartes and those who followed him, the way of thinking about knowledge changed, and the axiom that more and more people based their knowledge upon was the axiom that Descartes introduced to us, although others had said something similar earlier: I think, therefore I am. He thought that that was a foundation for knowledge. You couldn't deny that you were thinking, even if you were thinking. The very fact that you were thinking showed that you exist. So he was looking for a foundation that Christians and atheists and Muslims, secularists, spiritual types, could all agree was indisputable. And from this foundation and other approaches, he then gradually built up a whole system of thought to try to convince people to become Roman Catholics. But notice how his axiom runs: I think, therefore I am. 200 years earlier, no Christian would have said that very easily. Because God thinks. God knows everything. If we exist, then it's because of God's power. Our knowledge, even our existence, are finally dependent upon Him. But this side of Cartesian thought, we begin with I. I begin with me. And that puts me in a place where I start evaluating not only the world around me, but morals and history and God. So that God now becomes simply, at best, the inference of my study. That changes everything. The Bible doesn't run along those lines. God simply is.